Hello, everybody. Let me go ahead and get something loaded in here because I forgot to, because it has been a very hectic day. So, one moment here. I've got to put something very important into this so we can start. So, whoop, come on, work with me here, you dirty dog.
Woof.
Where's that thing? Where'd it go? No, seriously, where did it go? There it is.
It requires more energon.
Use the universal greeting.
And thank you all for joining us on this live stream for Iconicon, where we're going to talk about the 90's Transformers, which is a very wide topic. I have some guests with me here today, so we'll go ahead and get everybody to introduce themselves. Jody, you go ahead and go first.
Weep, Gragna, Weep, Ninibong. Greetings and salutations.
Zazel, you're next.
Oh, well, bar weep, grana weep, ninny bong to everybody in the chat. And back to you, Jody. I'd offer you an energon cookie, but I know that you're trying to cut back. I'm Zazel from Sergeant Slaughter's Slaughterhouse. Everyone was getting sick of my face, so you can't see it this time. Sorry, guys.
Well, you can either join the stream or you can go home in a ditty bag, an itty bitty ditty bag. And we have finally with us Mr. Ken Poe. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, so I will skip through the universal greeting because most of my friends are so sick of hearing me say it, and the other two gentlemen here have already done that. But yes, this is Ken with Toy Connections. You may have heard my voice on a couple of the streams. This will be the third one that I've done. So while other people might be sick of my face, I don't get sick of my own face because but people don't know this. I'm a little bit of a narcissist, even though I pretend not to be. So here we are, and thank you, Thomas, for hosting this, and Jody and Zazel for joining in.
Well, you guys are more than welcome, and hopefully we won't horrifically embarrass ourselves by making it very clear how old we all are, and that maybe we like Transformers a bit too much. So, uh, for those of you who are not in the know, I'm probably the young, oddly enough, and this is very oddly because I'm not often in this position, I'm probably the youngest guy in this live stream today. So, my start with Transformers, well, technically was in G1 because it was around when I was a kid, and of course I had toys of it. I didn't really get heavily into Transformers until Beast Wars came out in the 90's, and man, that just started off an entire, like, collection and love of this franchise that I never had before. And to this day, I have like a ton of freaking Transformers that I still collect. Although, starting to question if I should continue with how Hasbro's operating. We're gonna go ahead and go down the list. And Jody, why don't you tell us how you got your start in Transformers?
Yeah, so I'm probably the oldest one in this chat, and mid 80s, it was around 10, 12 years old. So we actually didn't have Saturday morning cartoons on the Dutch channels, but we found an English channel, a British channel, the Sky Channel, and those actually had morning cartoons, and that's how I got hooked, dramatically hooked on Transformers, and ever have been since.
All right. How about you, Zazel?
Well, Transformers had sort of always been around. I was born in 1980. But as you know, some of my earlier memories of playing Transformers, I can't remember the first one I ever got. I just remember because I had two brothers. You know, we all got Transformers, so we always had a big collection in the house. But yeah, I couldn't tell you what the first one was. I still haven't collected my last one, so I can't tell you what my last one is yet. But yeah, I've always enjoyed the cartoon G1. Moving forward into Beast Wars, Beast Wars got me probably back into collecting Transformers again.
There, there's such thing as your last one. Anyways, all right. Ken Poe, what's your background with this?
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in 1982 myself, so there's a couple ways that I got into Transformers. One was I had an older brother who had a short time where he was into Transformers before he moved on, so he passed on some figures to me. But by and large, my exposure was the third season of it. So while that's the season that's least watched among the first three, it was when I was kind of like cognizant enough to like demand to watch and sit in front and change the volume on the remote control. So I always tell people that I catch G1 that it was the third season by that point in time. But of course, with all the reruns and everything, it was easier to watch everything else, watching the movie. loving it through Generation 2, which I know we're going to talk about today, loving it through Beast Wars all the way to today. It's probably the most represented toy line in my personal collection present day. And as for collecting my last Transformer, I will be old, long in the tooth, and before they put me in the grave, they'll put a Transformer in there with me from whatever that year is. So that'll be my last Transformer, if that ever happens.
Well, I don't know if I'm ever going to completely stop. Personally, I've moved on to some third-party stuff, which, while can be a little bit pricey, it's kind of cool. But let's go ahead and start with 90s Transformers. So, in terms of animation, to my knowledge, the only Transformer series or cartoon actually in the 90s, specifically like at the beginning of the decade, was Transformers Zone, and it was only in Japan. And good luck if you want anything from that series in toy form. You will have some kidneys you'll need to clone and sell. But Zone was really interesting. I believe the correct term I'm going to try to use here from wrestling, because I'm not a wrestling guy, is they turned a lot of the characters that they featured near the end into jobbers completely.
Right.
Like, Die Atlas just beats the stuffing out of everybody. It cuts Predaking literally in half. Like, Zone is its own special brand of wild and out there. But after that, there wasn't really much in the way of Transformers in terms of cartoon, especially not in Japan, for about 6 years or so. But what Sunrise did after they got done with Transformers, they wind up branching off and doing something called the Brave series, which I'm hoping to talk about a little bit next year on Iconicon. But at that point, Hasbro was, trying to figure out what they needed to do, because the only Transformer toys that were coming out at that time were things like the Action Masters, which I've met like maybe 3 fans of the Action Masters in my entire life, like actual hardcore fans, because, if you have Transformers, you want them to transform.
Right.
What, you don't like non-transforming action figure Transformers with neon-colored weapons that do transform?
Look, sometimes you need to go do battle in the Play School jungle.
Yeah,
I was really into those non-transforming Transformers. To be fair, they were side by side with my GI Joe. I never really had a big issue with it. I thought Devastator was a weird choice.
Yeah.
But, well, Hasbro never does anything in scale, right?
That's true.
Yeah. Those Action Masters were finally in scale with the Triptychon and Metroplex bases, though. Devastator notwithstanding. I used to have them sit on the bases and like man turrets and things like that for the Action Masters. So they were definitely useful for that.
Well,
I think they were well done. Like, they look good.
Well, there's a couple things about it that I will say is very interesting. And I don't completely hate Action Masters as a whole, because my focus on Transformers, despite having a master collection, is always going to be on the animation, and it's always going to be on the storytelling. So having something closer to the animation models was kind of cool in concept. But one thing I didn't learn until I actually watched a repair video by Toy Ploy is that the T-bar for the crotch, the old legs, is completely different than the one for the Joes. So while they have an almost identical construction, the parts are different. I find that kind of fascinating. The last time I think an Action Master, like a true Action Master, was released was in the 2001 New Year Convoy box set that had like... Which I have, because he is my favorite version of G1 Optimus, because he's as close to animation accurate as possible. And he came with
the blue eyes and the Matrix. You got a lot there.
The blue eyes, the blue windows. He was a Grail item when I was a kid, and when I was an adult, I had this problem of sometimes not realizing I can do specific things now. Like when I first went to BotCon, it wasn't until what was it, 2011, and I'm like. I really ought to go. I really wish I could go to a BotCon sometime, because I always wanted to when I was a kid, and then I realized, wait a minute, I'm an adult with functional money. I can go to BotCon, and 4 years later they shut it down. But the thing is,
well, they still have TFCon, Thomas. They still got TFCon.
Yeah, and I do like that. I'm hoping to go this year. But like when it came to this, like I saw it when I was a kid, 14, 15. Like, I really want that. And I didn't get it till like 3 or 4 years ago when I'm like, wait a minute, I wanted that thing and now I can get that thing. And I got him, and he came with a mouse pad, a bunch of stickers, and a little animation colored Action Master Optimus with no weapon.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I guess the modern interpretation of that now is that reaction figure line, right?
No, I disagree. I wouldn't say it's the reaction figure line. I'd say it's probably closer to the Transformers Red series.
Yes, I was about to say.
Now,
yeah, the 6-inch line. Yeah.
Super 7 has their ultimates of the Transformers, and because I've had people here tell me they want me to review it, I picked up 2 of them, and Optimus is god awful. In both articulation, paint, and build. And Ghost Starscream, when you take him out of package, and I say this having never partaken in it, but been around people who do, smells like weed. And I don't know why. But no,
did you get a Dutch version?
No, I didn't. No. All of Super 7 stuff comes from China, and they have very, very, very draconian rules about that in China. You think America's bad? Oh, China's worse.
Weed's legal over here on the west coast of Canada, so.
Well, you guys also have free health care, so.
Okay.
Rub it in our faces more, why don't you? But anyway, that's what we have.
Why I'm here.
That's the closest thing we have to Action Masters in the modern age. I think it's a bit of an improvement, but they of course have their issues. But after Action Masters and Pretenders and all the other stuff that just did not work, Hasbro tried. Well, we're going to take G1 and we're going to throw a coat of paint over it. We're going to use modern cutting-edge CGI to have the Cybernet Space Cube, and we're going to reissue old episodes calling it G2. And
right.
It lasted, 13 episodes? And everybody's like, no, we're not rewatching it again. We already did that for like 5 years. We're not doing it all over again. They
did do a new theme song, though, and it was sort of like, I think that's kind of where the original thought about the Great War happened. Like, oh, this amazing war happened in the past, and we're going to tell you about it. So they compelled me through the theme song. But then the episode would start to be just the same thing, and I'd be like, "Oh, come on!" Right? Bit of a letdown. Like this is a really cheap way to do a rewrite.
Well,
I'm not a hater of anything, but I couldn't. Yeah, it was a bit irritating.
Well, we'll test that theory as we go down the list, Ken. But the way I see G2, it's almost like an attempt to do what G.I. Joe did in offering straight up repaints like Tiger Force, Night Force, and so forth. And you can't really do that too often with a Transformer other than give it a new paint job. And some of them, I think one of my favorites when I was a kid was little old Beachcomber, who was in a green, sort of metallic green. I quite liked it.
You gotta love the 90s, the era of repaints and recolors and neon colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the funny thing is with G2, I don't think it ever made, it definitely didn't make it to the Netherlands. It barely made it to Europe, and I was actually Googling it before. I only think like the second wave or third wave or something from G2 toys made it over to Europe, but none of the originals. But those colors, like, I only got aware of G2 as an adult, and I was looking into it, and my God, those colors, especially the Dinobots, what an awful color choice.
I don't mind those ones either, to be fair. I think some of them could be considered better than the original, or equal to, because that Jazz that you were showing, Ken, I think that's just as good as G1 Jazz, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Jody's referring mostly just to the Dinobots, though, for the color scheme, unless I'm wrong. But yes, the black sideswipe, the G2 Jazz, those were great. And you mentioned the mini bots there, Zazel. The gold Bumblebee, because he had the faceplate look and not the like mouth look. To me, that was actually my gold bug growing up, because he was actually gold and he had a faceplate. So to me,
well, and the actual gold bug was a little bit lackluster.
Yeah, being like a wind-up toy, basically.
Right.
Well, the Thunderbolts make great kids' toys for young kids to get into Transformers.
Yeah,
that is true.
Pretty much. Yeah.
What I find interesting, though, is while Hasbro initially started out with like slight variations and, of course, complete repaints of G1 toys, they eventually wound up changing a bit and trying to innovate. So we get Dreadwing and Darkwing. We get G2 Megatron, which is essentially a standard now, to where Megatron turns into a tank often.
And about time, right?
Right? A lot of people complain about Megatron not being a gun now, but I think they don't really reflect on why he was initially. Obviously, from the Microchange line or Microman line, where it was a P-38. The main reason why Megatron was chosen as leader of the Decepticons for that is because it was a German handgun.
Right.
A very specific award that I should not have to tell anybody here about. But since United States law had changed, unfortunately, due to toys like Megatron, they had to change them. And it's either that or you get a bright orange Megatron, and genuinely nobody but like maybe 5 people want that. We don't pay attention to them. So you have to change him. So he's a warmonger. He's extremely powerful. So what do? You turn him into a tank. That's essentially what you have to do.
That's right.
And
You know, I loved that green G2 tank because, like, I bought Power Master Optimus Prime in 1988, and I was like, oh my goodness, a Megatron that scales with my Power Master Optimus. That was amazing.
Yeah,
For me personally.
in retrospect, sure, but at the time when G2 Megatron first came out, all you had was the G2 re-release of G1 Optimus, who's like a manlet in comparison. So,
well, yeah. Oh my God.
That's why I.
So
think, that's why
was there a bigger outcry for gun not tank than there was for truck not monkey?
Oh no, not at all. Because it's not, number one, it's not as fun to say.
No, yeah.
We'll get to the monkey.
We will. I do genuinely think that's the reason why they made Laser Rod Optimus Prime, was because, holy crap, Megatron's massive now, what do we do? Oh, we'll just make a bigger Optimus, which is always a good idea. But going off that point, they innovated that Optimus for like years.
They did.
Within fan communities, was like voted as the most fun toy. And
well, the use of all the ball joints, like, it was so articulated, right?
Yeah.
You could finally have an Optimus you could properly play with.
And he had a big sword. Where can you go wrong?
A light-up sword, if I recall correctly.
A light-up sword. Only in one hand. And, of course, his trailer turned into an actual, like, combat station that had firing missiles and discs and a giant... The bane of every adult. The punch pump rocket launcher.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And, of course, Kecker's Boy brings up a good point about, the G2 comics. It didn't really grab him. I found them interesting because... they were comics of Transformers that I could get a hold of, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And secondly, like, what they try to do with it, they did their best. They really could. But they knew the writing was on the wall. That's why they named the main antagonist G-Axis. G-Ax-Us. It was literally saying, it's a pun. That's the entire point.
No way.
Yes.
You know what? I never thought of it that way. I never knew how to pronounce G-Axis for the longest time. I'm like, is the J silent? Which letter is silent? It looks like one of those words where, like, you're not supposed to pronounce half of it.
Yeah. Kecker's Boy says it felt a bit too 90s edge, and it was getting done with that at the time. Oh, it was absolutely just nothing but edge and grit. And I love the fact that one of the things they did for the Masterpiece was they took Sideswipe and they repainted him in his G2 colors. And some third-party creator came with, like, the bandolier and the rocket launcher. It's like, this is so unapologetically 90s epicness. Thank you, Dimos.
I love the black scheme. I prefer it over the red one. I don't know why.
It is pretty. Thank you, Dimo Z, for the $2 super chat. I think I'm the only American who adores Euro G1. Well, you got at least one European here, so.
Yep. Thunderclash, baby. Thunderclash. How about that guy?
I got a couple of them. Thunderclash is really cool. I say that because I own, like, Machine Wars Optimus, so I know in concept he's a cool design. But this is where we move on now, because after G2, they didn't know what they were gonna do.
Yep.
Like, okay, we tried the initial thing, and then we tried the initial thing with a brand new hat. Oh God, what do we do? So at that time, and of course this will be covered in the Beast Wars video if I don't have to re-edit it 500 billion times. What happened was Hasbro actually acquired Kenner. They bought Kenner outright. And anybody who's watching this, I'm sure you know who Kenner is. Half of you were from Retro Blasting, you know who Kenner is. But Kenner looked at it and is like, you know what? What if Monkey? And they decided to just completely do a complete different design. They're like, okay, so They were cars and planes to hide in sight. And, theoretically, one could argue if an alien species saw us, Michael, hold on real quick, Amazing Bro, Michael from Retro Blasting isn't on this right now. I've got Ken Poe, Zazel, and Jody Spore. But there was a short story written years ago about how if aliens saw us, like, from a distance, they wouldn't assume that human beings are the dominant species. They'd assume it'd be the vehicles. So how do you blend in? You pretend to be the vehicle. That's the essential idea that the Autobots and Decepticons had. So what if you take that one step further? Like, okay, so you can tell if a car is parked down the road and just sitting there awkwardly. So that's true. What if it's your neighbor's cat?
Right.
And that's a Transformer you're not going to know. And if the Transformers are an exploration group at that point, because the Great War's over and they've downsized and they've become more efficient energy-wise, their hostilities have ended for over 500 years. So we had to take the few of the local life forms. So animals, plants, whatever have you. That makes sense. Like from a storytelling perspective, that would make sense. So they put out Beast Wars, and the first Beast War toys were a 2-pack of Optimus Primal and Megatron, but they're not the ones you're thinking of. Because they had just acquired Kenner, they decided to do one homage piece for one character. So the Optimus Primal that came out there was a bat. And in his robot mode, he has striking similarities to Batman, because Kenner had the Batman license at that time.
Oh, right. Okay.
And Megatron
I didn't make that connection.
was an alligator or a crocodile. I can't remember which one it was. I think he's gator. I don't know why. Nobody knows why, but he is. And they auto-transform. They are genuinely really cool. Optimus comes with these 2 giant scimitars. It's freaking rad. And at that point, they decided, okay, well, we need to flesh out the line more, because they finally got story together, characters, designs, and all that. And they created the Maximals and Predacons previously for, obviously, the 2-pack, but this is when we get really into it, when you get a lot of the other characters from the show. Optimus Prime no longer exists in this continuity in terms of being the leader. Instead, it's Optimus Primal. We find out in Beast Machines through a retcon that he's a descendant of Optimus Prime, but the Maximals are an exploration group. The Predacons are essentially space pirates that stole stuff and ran with it because reason that is elaborated later on. And the reason why Optimus Primal is a gorilla is, number one, obviously naming convention would be hilarious. And 2, they wanted to do an homage to King Kong. That's why Megatron is a Tyrannosaurus. And
right. Of course.
And Optimus Prime is a gorilla. Now, what they did with these is really interesting, because one of the biggest pains, as everybody in this call knows, is with G1 toys, when you go from one form to another, you got parts laying all over the place.
The parts former.
You have fists or weapons or whatever. Beast Wars.
Sometimes a head.
Oh, God, yes. Beast Wars solved that. Optimus Primal, when he is in his gorilla form, he stores everything cleanly away.
Yep.
And that's true for most Beast War toys. Yeah, there's some that are kind of less conspicuous, like unfortunately Cheetor, because of his gut gun, which the fan term for it is. It stores under his stomach. He looks like the buffest cheetah you will ever meet in your entire life. But, and of course, we have Dinobot with literally his robot legs underneath his rib cage. But they were really interesting. They were innovative. The ball joints, the articulation was higher than anything they had in G1 at the time. And go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Lyle. But technically, Dinobot was a part former. Because you had to rip off his tail.
No,
the tail. And became...
I'm talking about weapon storage.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Like, obviously, if you have to take a weapon from anything on any transformer and put it somewhere else. So in that case, you could argue it's a part former. But in terms of weapon storage, like Beast Wars, like blew the living daylights out of G1. Who here has had to put Optimus's fists in his chest? Everybody here has done it at one point, or in the trailer, or
absolutely, absolutely. Until you got the New Year's one you got, and you put the Matrix in his chest, and you go, now where did the fists go? So something ends up going in the trailer.
Right. So and of course you had the mutant mask that all the first wave came with, because the concept was there was going to be an in-between where the animalistic nature would take over the Transformer, and they go on rampages, and Mainframe took one look at that and said, we are not doing that, and it's way too expensive, and this is not within the budget. So they scrapped that and they decided to stick with a small cast due to budget and everything. So there's tons of Beast War toys that never got an ounce of show representation. And some
Oh yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I remember the good thing about the Beast Wars was that it was the first time in a long time that I wasn't afraid to transform it.
They were so durable; it was ridiculous.
Right, and if a leg fell off, it'd just go right back on again because of the ball joint.
Yeah.
Where the G1 stuff, if you broke a leg off, it was off.
Mhm.
It wasn't going back on. And I was a pretty young dad, so Beast Wars was still out and in shops when my kids were getting into Transformers too, and they were able to get the handle on these Beast Wars, and I didn't feel like it was going to be an issue for them to transform it either or break it. So it became one of those things that we were all able to sort of sit around and muck around with as a family. So. Yeah, lots of memories for Beast Wars.
I remember when I found out about how that worked, because my first Beast War figure, oddly enough, was before I got into the show and into hardcore collecting, was Magnaboss. Because I like lions, I like eagles, and I like action figures, so I'm like, this thing's cool. And it's a combiner. I remember combiners. Unfortunately, I remember that it was the first combiner I messed with was Devastator, and you blow on him and he falls apart. But I'm like, you know what,
Yeah.
I'll take a shot at it. So I mowed lawns, I did a lot of work to buy him. And my sister was fiddling with him, and she turns to me and hands me the head of Prowl, like the small head. Like, where's this head go? And I freak out from him, like, oh my god, did he break? Because I just bought the thing. Nope,
Yeah.
just pops right back on. I'm like, oh my god, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The downside to that is, though, that I would sometimes go to the toy box and see just bits of Maximals and Predacons, and that I'd have to try and figure out where all the parts went back onto.
Yep, and you look at the Waspinator parts, you're like, you know what? They can stay there. That's canon.
Yeah, this is fine. This is in canon. Yeah.
Thank you, World of Cardboard.
And that's where.
For the $5 super chat, agreed. Beast Wars was and still is a fantastic toy line. I was in college with first job and money to spend. I bought them all. Oh, you spent a lot of money then. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that doesn't matter. I was just going to say that transitions us right into the cartoon, which holds up story-wise right to this day. Like, they aged up with the audience. They started using words like the arc, because that I know the arc was used in the comics, but when you give it that name and it's retroactively just adds so much lore, like it makes that first ship revered. They call that war before the Great War. They make the current lineup the descendants of the G1 guys. Like, it just gave the G1 battles and storyline so much more depth to it. Like, to me, it made G1 better from that perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Again, I started watching Beast Wars in the middle of season 2. I used to wake up in the mornings and, like, before 7th grade, the summer before 7th grade is when I got introduced to Sailor Moon, so I was used to getting up at that point because 6:30 is when Sailor Moon would come on, and I had to make sure that, like, I was quiet about it, because my old man caught me watching that, he would have killed me, because he would have... it's funny, but I'm actually being dead serious, because he would have thought I was gay, and he made it very clear that if he ever thought that, he would have killed me. So, yeah, there's your in-depth...
Sailor Moon? Sailor Moon would have given him that impression. I think that if I was caught watching Sailor Moon, it would have been the just because they were
wearing skirts.
What they were wearing. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I want to be tuxedo mask.
You would assume, but my old man is like military, and his first thought was, "Why are you watching a girl show, boy?" It wouldn't have been any more in depth than that at all. Good, period. But so I got used to that, and I used to wake up on like school days. And it had like the Fantastic Four cartoon and an Avengers cartoon. I can't remember which one it was. Silver Surfer. But at some point, they changed the lineup and Beast Wars came on. I'm like, you know what? I'll go ahead and give this thing a shot. I got a toy from the series. I might as well. And it blew my mind. Like, this show was amazing. And I like watched it religiously. To the point to where when they would get caught up and they would go back to the first episode, I'd get pissed because I'm like, wait, where's the new episode coming out? And this is before I really knew how to look up that stuff online. So Beast Wars really engaged me. There was a few moments of, is Grimlock going to show up? because he's always been my favorite G1 character. Found out he had a Beast War toy, went and got him, but it was really smartly written. And the funny thing,
So you might have noticed that I've gotten a bit quiet because I think I'm the only one of this group that didn't collect a toy. So Beast Wars, it's for me. I've kind of got ambiguous feelings about it because for us in the Netherlands, it was the first Transformers on TV again since G1, and although I did watch it as a kid, it's definitely not my favorite. I do have some issues with the Beast Wars, like there's different kind of animals from different eras, like a dinosaur or two dinosaurs with monkeys. They have to be almost in constant in beast mode due to too much energy floating around on Earth. So yeah, I have ambiguous feelings about it. I definitely didn't collect the toys, even though my brother and I were avid toy collectors from Transformers. We kind of skipped this until the Transmetal era, and then it got a bit interesting. My brother actually bought the red trap Transmetal.
Yeah.
Beast Machines was definitely more interesting for me because back on Cybertron and vehicle modes.
Oh, well, Beast Machines for me is memorable for one thing. That spoiler alert, can I say it? Who Tankor was?
Sure. I mean, it's like
it was it was Rhinox, right? So that reveal there, right, of your smart scientist type of guy, all of a sudden being like a key bad guy was very, very emotionally gut wrenching when we find out.
How did they explain that though? I don't remember the explanation for that.
I was just sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
The explanation. Are you talking about the explanation for why Rhinox turned heel?
Yes.
Right.
Thank
so
you for the
I remember watching the end of Beast Wars, and they had Megatron strapped to the ship, and they were taken off. And then I remember the beginning of Beast Machines didn't really add up or acknowledge that particular event, or at least it didn't make sense to me. And then I remember I tuned out quite a bit, but I did watch that episode where they show Rhinox. And then I was for the life of me I can't remember why that was a thing.
Okay, I can explain why this happened. There's a little bit of inside baseball we didn't find out till later. Okay, so Beast Wars was primarily written by Bob Skier. Now, Bob Skier, like Bob Forward and Larry DeSilla before him, actually had never worked really on Transformers before for the most part. But Dan DiDio, which comes out of left field, by the way, because anybody who reads comics knows who Dan DiDio is, but he's not really a Transformer guy. He's not anywhere near the first person you think of. Told Bob Skier, ignore, do not watch, do not reference, do not research Beast Wars. It is too continuity heavy, and we want a new show.
Oh, wow.
Did not think for a second about the backlash he'd get for it, because, he's just, let's just say he's not the best guy in terms of that. But that's how that happened. That's how we got an Optimus Primal that lost his will to fight, how we got a Rat Trap that was less interested in just getting the job done and more interested in following whatever the modus operandi of the episode was. So Rhinox turning heel, becoming evil, vile, was explained in the show as, him being separated from the organic body, him seeing Megatron's grand scheme, and essentially just having some sort of existential crisis where he's like, you know what? I think Megatron's right. He's the wrong guy for this. I'm the right guy for this. But all the war and all the destruction, this happens because people are individualistic. It was Rhinox having an out-of-body experience, and his brain essentially just saying, you know what, screw this. That's why he turned that way. Thankfully, like, before he bit the big one, he seems to have had a come to Jesus moment, which is an odd term to use in Transformers, but it still stands. And
comes to Primus.
Yes, comes to Primus. And he winds up, like, coming back to his senses, but that's why you saw that. There was, until the second season, there was a major disconnect. And unfortunately, Bob Skier got a lot of unneeded hate for it because he wasn't aware of what he was coming into because his boss told him not to be.
Yeah, gotcha. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, no wonder. I always wondered why Beast Machines felt a little disjointed from Beast Wars. I didn't actually know that last little bit there, Thomas. So, wow.
Beast Wars took a lot of risk, because while Beast Wars on the outside, you're like, oh my god, these writers are brilliant, and to a way they are, of course. But if you ask Bob Forward if you can get a hold of him, of course, unfortunately, you can't ask Larry DiTilio. He's no longer with us. But if you ask Bob Forward was like, we were flying by the seat of our pants. We were hoping this all would work together. We had a bunch of doggone irons in the fire just in case. Because at the end of the first season, they didn't know they were going to get a continuation. They didn't know the second season was coming. So when Optimus Primal died, that could very well have been the end of Beast Wars. 100%. Yep. So when it comes to that, you're like, well, Beast Wars was in a completely different league, and to a point, you're right. But Beast Machines, because of how unbridled it was by Beast Wars, could go differently. And a lot of the writing, in some cases, is a lot more, for lack of a better word, big-brained. It's a lot more metaphysical, and asks some really hard questions, which I really appreciate. Because again, at the end of the day, it's a kid's cartoon. Beast Machines wasn't made for people our age; it was made for children. And they had questions about identity, questions about ethics, questions about the morality of individualism versus groupthink. And you literally had the main villain stealing people's souls.
Yeah.
He committed mass genocide. The thing about Beast Machines that a lot of people don't recognize at first, it opens with Megatron having won. Completely. He's beaten everybody. He's won. Yeah. There's nobody on Cybertron until the Maximals get reformatted that stand against him and it completed. Every character you could possibly think of that could have stood up to him, because there were G1 people that were characters that existed in the time of Beast Machines and Beast Wars. They got whooped too. Soundwave whooped. Ravage dead now, obviously. In some other writings, you see the Dinobots are still around. They're gone too. He beat everybody. He is the only character in Transformers that whooped everyone. He did it in the most sneaky, underhanded way possible, but it's that version of Megatron, so of course that's the way he did it. But when you look at him, you're like, you know what's really terrifying? Megatron thinks he's right. He's not doing this because I have an evil scheme. Yes. He's doing this because he thinks he's morally correct, and that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a great David K. impression there with the yes.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not Jobby. I can't get him here, so I have to make do.
No, look. To be fair, though, obviously, Beast Wars weren't exactly sure what they were doing for the first season either. I think it wasn't until the second season and beyond where they started to try and do a little bit of a retcon on where they were and what they were doing. Making it Earth by taking away one of the moons and finding out that the Autobots were on and the Decepticons were there too, which I think if you're going to do anything to fix that up, by the end of it was actually pretty genius.
Yeah, it was. They clearly had some sort of plan or outline going, but just like, all right, so we have two moons and this needs to be Earth. What do? We blow up the first moon.
Yeah, that's it. And then Dinobot's like, oh, one moon. Dead giveaway. Yeah. I know where I am now.
Yeah, Stonehenge wasn't enough of one. The moon had to blow up first.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's like, I see Stonehenge, but two moons. I'm not sold. Yes.
The local
you're making me want to rewatch the later seasons of Beast Wars now, because I only watched parts of season 1 to prep for this.
Well,
dude, go back. Yeah, it's a good. I think the first season is good just to set up the premise of what they are, and then after that, it really gets good as far as story is concerned. And by the end of it, it gets to genius level writing, in my opinion.
Well, I remember the finale being just amazing, and there's a line in there where Optimus is trying to stop Megatron, and he says something very similar to what was said in the 86 movie. I think he says, we have to stop Megatron no matter what the cost is, but it's done in Gary Chalk's voice as opposed to Peter Cullen's, but it just has that homage to Megatron must be stopped no matter the cost, and delivered in the Optimus Primal way, which still stands the test of time, but is not talked about enough. So there's my shameless little plug.
I think he just yelled out essentially, you hear me, Megatron, no more, and then he breaches the ship of bridge of Nemesis, and he squares up. Megatron's like, "All right, out with it." The whole destiny and honor speech, and Optimus just punches him. It's just
I just love it because they're not quite that same sort of like traditional face and heel. You know, this Optimus has a little bit more of a temper, and the David K version of Megatron is a little more scheme heavy, which I think you're alluding to there, Thomas. Like he plans things a little bit more, like he seems more devious, right, and less hot-tempered. So you have a less hot-tempered Megatron and a more hot-tempered Optimus, and I think that makes for a really great foil of characters that you don't otherwise have gotten used to from G1.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect pairing, because if you were to try to stick that Megatron with any other Optimus, it would not end well. In terms of like the back and forth, like you have G1 Optimus, Megatron, what you're doing is immoral, and you need to stop. There's precious life here, and he just yawn and keep blowing things up. As much as I do like G1 Prime as like an icon, he really only mixes well with that one version of Megatron that actually sits there and banters back and forth with him. Optimus, Primal, and Megatron don't have that long history. They don't have that banter relationship. They both hate each other, and they both want each other done in one way or the other. So the end of season endings like the Agenda or Nemesis just really highlights that. Because Megatron at the end of Agenda, when he realizes I'm not getting my way the way I want, he goes full scorched earth. Literally full scorched earth.
Yeah.
And winds up hijacking someone else's plan, because he wasn't the only schemer among the Predacons. Which, by the way, I think is funny that a throwaway line to jab at Tarantulas got co-opted and turned into actual canon. So that's always fun. He offhandedly called Tarantulas a spawn of Unicron, and according to the writers, like that was just meant as a jab. Like, essentially calling him the son of the devil. And it got taken and turned into actual canon to where he's literally an agent of Unicron that wants the Autobots and Decepticons wiped out so Unicron could thrive.
I thought...
So things just come full circle.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was great. I loved also the inclusion of Starscream and Unicron in Beast Wars as well. I think that was handled very well. I thought the Ravage idea was also very good.
And he talked.
Well, yeah, I mean, after a while, when every other beast around you was talking, it's like, come on, man, you got to step up your game.
Yeah.
I just want to know, why did they give him a Russian accent?
I mean, if you're gonna pick a voice and you want to sound menacing, what would you pick?
German.
if you're writing a kid cartoon and
German,
Yugoslavian, Mexican, right, Cody?
All
right. Well, you got one.
I still can't get used to talking Ravage.
Well, in fairness, he did talk once in G1.
Yeah, but you mean when they played his tape back when he was in Soundwave's chest?
And he was narrating it. Frank Welker through a synthesizer. Yes.
Yes.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, that is pretty bad.
Yeah, I had a 2-second delay while I was thinking about it. I'm like, wait, is Thomas wrong? No, he's totally right.
Kecker said because Ravage was a spy, secret agent, so Russian. Well, I mean, they could have made him. He could have made him Scottish. That's James Bond reference.
Oh man!
The inclusion of Starscream, like literally making him immortal, was also an invention from Beast Wars. Because up until then, you had Starscream's go, sure, and then of course at the end of that, Galvatron killed him again because of course he did. But taking that sparks the whole thing. There's a lot that goes into modern Transformer myth and lore that started in Beast Wars. And a lot of people don't recognize that because it's such a staple now. They don't know where it came from. Kind of like Harley Quinn. She started as just literally in the script, hench girl. Just a random henchman. Throwaway character is now massive, has her own series, her own cartoon, all this other stuff.
Yep.
But with Beast Wars, they established so much for Transformers lore that people just take it for granted now without really recognizing or understanding where it comes from. And it's
the Allspark comes from there, doesn't it?
Or
does it not? Maybe I'm
wrong. I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
it
Spark
does. It does come from Beast Wars.
Yeah, the Spark comes from Beast Wars. I'm trying to think what else. I know that there's more.
Sparks come from Beast Wars. as mentioned about what we just talked about, that came from Beast Wars.
Well, the golden discs get reused quite a bit now.
A bit.
Yep.
That's true.
So
yeah, I did they gloss over the Matrix on that?
they talked
Beast
about
Wars?
it, but at the same time, the Matrix was like what they called essentially the Allspark for a while.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah.
there's some continuity hiccups there because they used, of course, the movie model for Prime's chest, and they had the Matrix holding his spark, and there's a lot of question there.
Right.
So, yeah. One thing that we did forget to go over, though, which oddly enough, Dimos mentioned, but I completely glossed over, that's on me. We did get some, of course, the European Transformers here just completely redone in colors in some case. And this happened like in the middle of Beast Wars. So I guess Hasbro's like, okay, so we have these European models, and we like money. So let's see if anybody wants cars again. And they threw it out there, it barely lasted. Like, the designs were unique, but in terms of like articulation and ingenuity, it was a step behind Beast Wars. So it didn't really sell all that well. Like, I can go find a complete Machine Wars Optimus for like $50 now.
Mm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't quite hit. And just so I know, behind the G2 Laser Prime, is that the actual Lio Convoy?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I didn't watch the Beast Wars 2 or Beast Wars Neo. I forget exactly where that came from.
Yeah, that's oddly... I run into a lot of people that think my screen name's from Thundercats.
I knew right away it wasn't. Japanese Beast Wars. I'm one of the
Right.
few who wasn't. So
Yeah, my friend, a friend of the channel, Bushman, like, fantastic guy. Like, he's one of those guys that's like on par with me about Thundercats knowledge. He knows very little about Transformers outside of G1. He's like, I was in a Japanese, some sort of shop that was selling animation cells, and he found one from Beast Wars 2, and he saw the name. He's like, I for the longest time thought it was like some sort of fan character, and here it is. So that's what that's from. Like, yeah, Beast Wars wound up spinning off more than just Beast Machines. That isn't often talked about. We have Beast Wars the Second and Beast Wars Neo. Beast Wars the Second was about a group of Maximals led by Lio Convoy, because in the Japanese continuity, there's a Convoy Council.
Right.
Of course, Convoy being the name for Optimus Prime, so essentially a Prime Council. And they all
Right,
have
yeah.
Prefix and Convoy. So Beast Wars 2 was about some Maximals and Predacons finding some energy source on another world, and it's Unicron. Of course it's Unicron. It's always Unicron.
of course it always is. Yeah.
At the end of the series, characters go missing, right?
Oh.
And that's where
okay.
Beast Wars Neo picks up. And, of course, the main hero for that is Big Convoy, who turns into a woolly mammoth.
Yep.
How cool is that?
Really cool.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, this dude is a dick. And not a dick in the sense that he's mean ostensibly to other people, but in the fact that he's just sort of very single-minded. So he winds up getting stuck with a ragtag of other Maximals he has to train, because he didn't concern himself with like another convoy named Crow Convoy, and he wound up getting stuck in between transformations for a while. And
Oh, wow.
so Beast Wars Neo was essentially Transformers Police Academy.
Oh my goodness. So were Neo and Beast Wars the Second technically 90s, or did they come in the early 2000s?
No, they're 90s. They're 90s.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'll double check this to be sure. I know Beast
Right.
Wars the Second is, because it was aired between season 1 and 2 of Beast Wars.
Ah, okay, gotcha. This is where my knowledge falls apart a little bit here, but I do know that they've done like some modern versions of Lio Convoy. So that's the only reason why I was thinking of that. Plus, you have his image up there.
Yeah, Neo came out in '99, same year as Beast Machines.
There you go.
So they were eating
Excellent.
beef in the pan.
I'll have to check that out because I haven't seen it.
It has one of the most underrated intros that you would not think would come from Transformers, because it's very soft.
Okay.
It's,
Right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's
got that Gundam type of intro.
No, if you just
No,
listen
not
to
quite,
it,
okay.
if you listen to it without locked into visuals, you'll think it's from a shoujo anime. You'll think it's from like some slice of life anime that's just really sweet, but no, it's Transformers and characters are fighting and blowing each other up. What's really fun about Neo is some of the naming conventions. There's a giraffe named Long Rack.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's hilarious. Yeah.
Wow.
They are wild. It is the Japanese Beast Wars series, like Beast Wars, kind of did to Beast Wars what we've done to some other anime, like we did to Shin Chan or Samurai Pizza Cats. It is nothing in terms of like voice acting, direction, and tone that Beast Wars is here. Because here, while Beast Wars has some comedic moments, it's very serious. Characters
Yes.
live, they die. In Japan, Megatron screams like a schoolgirl.
Mm.
Like it is very much so played for laughs in Japan. I don't know why that decision was made, but it's very obvious that Japan's just as good at giving as they are getting when it comes to taking somebody's IP and making it a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool toys though. Like a lot of the Japanese variants of Beast Wars are very sought after, specifically Transmetal Megatron, because unfortunately the Hasbro release suffers from a form of gold plastic syndrome. So if you ever need a toy, if you ever need a toy to cosplay as 07 movie Jazz by the end of it, it's Beast Wars Megatron for Transmetal. he literally snaps off at the waist. But the Japanese version from Takara, it's made of just regular black plastic, so it doesn't have that problem. So it fetches an absurd amount, like $250, sometimes $300 in aftermarket.
Wow.
Man, you're one of the few who pronounce. I know that wasn't the point of it. Who pronounced Takara properly? It just people always forget that's actually how you pronounce it. I've just given up and just started calling it Takara.
Well,
but it just sorry, Lyle's really good with his Easter eggs in this particular stream.
Well, believe it or not, the reason why I pronounce it correctly and whatnot is less to do with my obsession with Transformers, more to do with the fact that I have a background in martial arts, and so I tend to pronounce things properly. And the phonetic of Japanese is not it's usually a instead of an a. So yeah, it's just ingrained in me at this point. Sensei was very adamant that things are to be pronounced properly. So yeah, I kind of miss like back when Takara used to have their own way of doing things or their own variants, because now they're just in lockstep with Hasbro, and it's not as fun.
Well, did the original Beast Wars cartoon have a Japanese equivalent? Like, I don't think these were released overseas. Like these Kenner.
No, they were.
They were? Okay.
Matter of fact, I have like some of the Japanese versions of them. There's a Toys R Us Japanese exclusive Dinobot that's show colored.
Yeah, you're right, because the Japanese version of Cheetor was actually like fully bone white. I remember that because my buddy had that. Tigatron. Yeah. And the one I had was yellow, and it was like, did you get some form of Cheetor here? Because like he's like, why is yours piss yellow? I'm like, oh no, come to find out later that was the Kenner one. It was an off-white cream color. I think that's why I misspoke and said Cheetor, because it was closer to that color.
But yeah, they have several variants. Matter of fact, let me see if I can count them all. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have like 5 or 6 versions of Optimus Primal, the gorilla from season 1 in toy form, because they did various different colors. There's the original black version, which is what we got here. Then they had a light gray version, which color-wise is my favorite. Then you had Skeleton Convoy, which is just all clear plastic. And not colored clear, just literally clear plastic. Then you had Burning Convoy, which is the red from the Beast Wars second movie. And you had a couple of lucky draws. One that was, of course, the obvious chrome gold. And then another one that was just a really pretty shade of blue. Good luck finding them. You will not find them. You will never find them. They're god-awful expensive. But no, they did that for a lot of different characters and a lot of different figures. Then even into like their 10-year anniversary for Beast Wars, because we did one for ours here in 2006. It was a Toys R Us exclusive. They did something called Telemoka, which was trying to take the Beast War toys and make them show accurate. And for some reason, and I don't know why, hey Peaches, they are fine, usually. I don't know why, both Takara and Hasbro botched Dinobot in different ways. For the 10th anniversary for Hasbro, they made the inside of his tail spinner blue for some reason. But Takara, instead of giving him stripes, they just made a whole bunch of splotches all over his Dino mode.
Oh, God.
So as a Dinobot fan, I'm offended, and they owe me. Like, it's wild. It's really interesting to see some of the variants here. And then, of course, they didn't get Beast machines till the 2000s, like late 2000s. So they have Beast Wars Returns, which are various different recolors in different deco of the Beast Machine toys, and the Beast Machine toy line didn't do all that well. So there you go. The 10th anniversary Dinobot suffers from GPS. Really, I've never actually had any problems with him. Now watch me go fiddle with him and him snap in half.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the GPS is very, very hit or miss on some of these toys. In particular, the Black Zarek from '88 there, which I know is not quite 90s. But that's when if you find no gold plastic syndrome, it just, the price like skyrockets.
The Black Zadok is Schrodinger's Decepticon in box. Because you don't know if he's alive or dead until you open it.
Pretty much. Pretty much. If you ever get a sealed one, not worth it.
And here's where I give modern day Hasbro props, because they are trying to delve more into some Japanese stuff. So I have Black Zadok downstairs from their Hasbro line. Their
The Earthrise?
Yes,
oh, no.
Yeah, he's from the Earthrise Scorponok mold. So yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that's cool. Like, that's really neat. Glad Hasbro's doing that. And I'm really glad that they had like a 40% off.
That was the HasLab that made the most sense when they did the Victory Saber, because it was a little bit esoteric.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I won't argue against HasLab in that, because I usually do argue against HasLab because I think it's asinine. But with Star Saber and Victory Leo, my only complaint with those so far is I don't like the hollow parts on them, because if we're paying for an exclusive, he better be exclusive. And I swear to God, if he comes out yellowed, like a lot of the modern stuff is currently, because they didn't have the additive in it for the plastic for whatever reason, I'm going to strangle somebody.
Ask Jody about hollow parts.
Yeah, HoloLens syndrome. I kind of stopped buying modern Hasbro. I just hate the HoloLens syndrome.
I don't blame you, not at all. I've had people try to justify, like, well, the old ones had hollow parts too. I'm like, yeah, occasionally, but good God.
Yeah.
Yeah, so nowadays mostly what I buy is either third party, especially masterpiece scale, and I do buy the Takara masterpieces.
Speaking of third party, since we're still talking about toys, and while it's not from the 90s, they are based on 90s things, Transart's Beast War line for the Transmetal stuff, I cannot recommend it highly enough. And they are putting out a Megatron Transmetal and a Rat Trap. So if you ever had the gold plastic syndrome, these are perfect upgrades in masterpiece scale for them.
Oh yeah, I'm looking it up now just to make sure we're thinking about the same thing. But they look awesome.
They do. Unfortunately, Beast Wars isn't very often tackled by third party, and I think I know why. I'm not going to downplay the artistic ability here, because the engineering is also absurd, but it's a lot easier in terms of like sculpting and design to do straight edges and flat lines than it is an organic creature. So
yes,
it's a lot harder to sculpt something organic. So I think that's why they tend to avoid Beast Wars, because there's obviously money there. Beast War fans will throw absurd amounts of money at really freaking stupid things. Like, there are people who still buy the Beast Wars Neo Razor Beast recolor called Randy, terrible name, or awesome.
Wow.
Who's nothing but gold plastic. There's a video, the number one most well-known video about gold plastic syndrome is a dude crushing that version of Razor Beast or Razorback in his hand, and it just turning to essentially crumpled pieces of plastic and powder. But people still buy it.
Did he snort it afterwards?
No, but somebody for some reason decided to take that and turn it into an SCP. So that was unique.
Okay.
That was unique.
Yeah.
So the SCP of that Transformer toy, which is all just fiction, is everything around him breaks, but he's fine. Jerks. But yeah, the 90s reinvented a lot of Transformer stuff, and for some reason, and I cover this in the video that's going to happen tomorrow, despite Beast Wars and all these series essentially changing the brand and making it thrive and survive, they don't get a lot of love in the modern age. While we had Beast War characters show up in the Kingdom Netflix series, which I don't want to watch because it looks so dang terrible. I watched Siege.
You don't want to watch, or okay, so you did try. For me, it was more the voice acting that bugged me more than the. I liked the animation. I'm not sure why. A lot of people don't, but the voice acting drove me nuts.
Okay.
For me, that entire series, what drove me nuts is a complete rewrite of character profiles. Complete rewrites.
Yes.
There's nothing in the series I like, and I'm bigger on animation than I am anything else. And the animation, because they use the CAD files and stick to them so obsessedly, it's just not fun to watch. Like I'm gonna go ahead and say this, and it might offend somebody, but we're on my channel, so of course I'm gonna offend somebody. You can literally just play with the toys.
Yeah.
And you'll probably write a better story.
Yeah.
Oh, if you're saying that the 90s were the Transformer being more innovative, what's your take on the Micromaster series then? Is it innovative, or is the ripoff of the Micro Machines?
I think it's a little of column A and a little column B. Obviously, they were trying to play off of how popular Micro Machines was at the time, but I can't get upset really for people trying to expand into things that are more popular in that case, because if that were the case, I couldn't like Ninja Turtles, because good God, in the 90s, Ninja Turtles piggybacked off of every other craze and destroyed it.
Yeah,
somehow survived. Like, there's a Nerf football Raphael. Why is there a Nerf football Raphael?
Samurai Leo.
Well, I don't think anyone expected Micro Machines to take off quite like it did. But there is a connection between Micro Machines and Transformers, with the voice actor of Blur having been the actor who did the Micro Machine fast talking commercials.
Yes.
And of course,
yes, and the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio was the kid in it, right? And he's also a toy collector, I heard.
That I don't know, but I do think it's interesting how, like, the TF Wiki, despite how cringe I find it to be, because haha, look, aren't we funny? They are obsessive about information. Like, they are obsessive.
They are.
They hunted down and somehow found the kid that was in the pre-episode promos with that giant Power Master Optimus Prime costume. How do you do that?
Wow.
It's like just some dude sitting at his computer. I will find you. I need to know.
And then what do you do? Like, what do you do after you find that out? What's your end game?
Can you imagine, like, hi, I watched a bunch of footage of you as a kid, and I just found you. And that guy just looks at him like, I'm going to call the cops.
Yeah.
But no, Micromasters, as Grim said, were a lot of fun to play with, although there's, like, an unknown number that are sitting, like, behind the sheetrock at my grandpa's house. Because I was a little kid, and I saw a hole in the wall. I'm like, you know what? I wonder if they fit. Okay, that one fit. Does this one fit? There's like a whole bunch of them in that wall. So whoever lives there now, like, has no clue they have Transformers in their wall. I'm in your walls. There's also a whole bunch of, like, little miniature dinosaurs buried in the yard.
You were not nice to your toys, man.
It wasn't that I was not nice to them. Is that I saw things and I need to recreate them. So I saw some old movie where dinosaurs got stuck in, like of course I recognize now as tar, but like it's a little like quicksand to me. So I'm like, I'm gonna make some in the yard. So I pour a whole bunch of water over sand and I bury the dinosaur. Like, the neuron activated.
Well, you remember that moment, and I believe that a memory is more valuable than a physical thing.
Usually.
And speaking of memories, right? The cool thing about Micromasters was, because you would often buy them in a 4-pack, if you bought them and you went to school, you had one for each of your friends during recess time. That's what I remember doing. So,
for me, the most fun was building Micromaster City, taking all the vehicles and every little base and just hook them up together. So same like the Micro Machines bases. That was the most fun for me, and you could actually build a pretty large city.
Yeah, but the age you were when those came out, that makes sense. But when they were out when I was a kid, like, I was a bit younger, and my parents were more like, all right, these are just big enough to where he won't eat them, but they're also cheap enough to where we can buy more. We're not buying those bases because he will destroy them. And they're right. I would have annihilated them. I'm like, all right, so I have a whole bunch of itty bitty little cars here, and I just saw a Godzilla film.
Oh, they do have something, the Micromasters. That's probably also why they're being re-released right now, just with slight little retools so they can connect to each other and become a sword or something. But yeah, they're doing re-releases now of Micromasters.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
The funny thing is, there were at least a couple of Micro Machine Beast War toys.
Is that right?
Yeah, there were 2 play sets. Oddly enough, the little miniature Transformers they come with were based off of like early concepts. So the Megatron there is like the crocodile or alligator Megatron, and the other figures are like usually non-show characters. But there was I can't even remember I'm pronouncing it right. A Rockanok, I believe it was. It's a killer whale that turns into a base of all things. And then there was a giant spider that turned into a base. And I have both of them downstairs just for the oddity of the fact that, okay, here's some Beast War Micromasters or Micro Machines. And I remember getting like the spider one because like mom gave us some money and she, you know how parents can be, like they don't want you to focus too much on one thing. She's like, all right, you can buy anything here that is not a Transformer. And I'm like, well, technically these are Micro Machines.
Fun in that.
I said, technically these are Micro Machines. She gave me a look. That look said, he's right. They're technically not Transformers because they don't transform. But at the same time, I don't want to acknowledge that. But I got it anyway, so I guess I won in the end.
Yeah, I was never given that sort of proposition before. It was always just go, get whatever you're into.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got 2 brothers.
Like I have an older brother and a younger sister. My household was very strange, so I'm not even going to try to compare it to anybody else's. Oh man, it was
Oh man. So you said you wanted to cover the Brave series in a future video there, hey Thomas?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one because for those who weren't able to get the rare Japanese Transformers, the retools and recolors in the Brave series was an amazing option.
Yeah, they had one of Desaurus, of course, and they had what is it, Grandis, wasn't it?
I had that. You're talking about Grandis. They called it Dagbase.
Yeah, Dagbase.
And I spent about I spent about $80 on it back in 2005. I remember thinking $80 is way too much, and this had the box. Good luck finding one now because I sold mine for about $250. Not thinking to flip it. I just got bored of it. But now trying to find the real Grandis, I think you're paying into the 4 digits.
Yeah, you
and
are.
Because of that, people are trying to buy the Dagbase, and you're paying into the high hundreds for it. So like, I'm now the dumbass who forever sold his Dagbase in box for $250.
Well,
forever.
If it's any consolation, you can just buy a box and it's about the same thing.
Yeah. If anyone's looking it up right now, Grandis or Dagbase, it literally is a cube. That's all it is. Everybody, all the hardcore Transformers fans want it. So, there's my regret.
What I'm really like though right now is Sola Chigokin's like trying to go all in on Braves. We haven't seen anything in like 8 months or so, but they got an X-Kaiser they're working on. They got Showa Ryujin that they're working on. They have Gal Faigar and replica Gal Gaigar, so I'm really looking forward to those. And unfortunately, like the Brave toys are also like shot up in price. I've been trying to get a hold of Dragon Kaiser from X-Kaiser, and he's going for like $200 now for some reason.
Wow. Look, I remember when I got the Sky Gary version for cheap and then found the real Sky Gary like in the same week. But then now good luck trying to find either one. Like the demand has just changed so much as people discover them. So.
Well, I've never heard of Brave before, so you're giving me some homework. I'm going to have to go and have a look at those.
Yeah, it's basically like a post G1 thing, right? But not really related to Transformers.
Same here as well. I've never heard of Brave, but here in Netherlands, like I said, it was a huge gap between G1. Then we got Beast Wars, Beast Machines, and then again a huge gap until way later with the modern crap.
As a final segue here, because we're going to have to wrap up here, because I want to give people like time between this and Michael's stream.
Right.
While Beast Wars and all that innovated, and we had car robots afterwards, which was a fantastic toy line, really fun. For whatever reason, Hasbro wound up taking a step back in terms of toy design and whatnot for like Armada. I remember first getting Armada Hot Shot, and I'm like, oh my god, I literally have G1 toys that move better than this.
Right, yeah.
Oh, and I combined Optimus Prime. Like, who gave him this head and why? This is unholy.
But it was cool putting Overload on his shoulders, though, and giving him that extra weapon set. I remember that being cool. Now this is getting to 2001, but still, Yeah.
I was more into the mini cons. I think the mini cons were at least a little bit better in the way that they were constructed as far as my Transformer collecting sensibilities were. I couldn't get into characters like X Brawn and even the Optimus Prime. Who else was the sports car?
I forget.
Right, I couldn't get in. Did that even have minicons? I'm not even thinking of the same show.
You're I'm thinking about Robots in Disguise. And you're probably thinking
I was gonna say. Yeah,
right,
there we go.
Yeah, well, that was just trash. I didn't really. I think actually there was one good combiner that I liked from that series, and I think there was 4 of them, and they were construction vehicles like Devastator.
Oh, you're talking about Build King.
Landfill. Was it Build King in Japan and Landfill in the States? Forget what his name was.
I can't remember it exactly. It's been a long time since I watched it because obviously there's no DVD release, so I'd have to do it digitally. But what's really funny, and this is just a little piece of culture, for lack of a better word. Back on the days of the AllSpark forum during this time, a friend of mine, Cheetamus, she created an alt account. Because what you could do with Build King is you could arrange it multiple different ways, and she created like this abomination out of the parts. She called it Build Thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking it up. Yes, it was Landfill in America and Build King in Japan. So
right.
These names are just hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
That combiner, they ended up coloring it all yellow for one release later on, and all green and purple like Devastator later on as well. And one of the characters' name was Grimlock. So I was like, all right, you've sold me on the name Grimlock. I'll take it.
The yellow release was for the Universe line, and the reason they used Grimlock is because they're like, oh god, the rights are about to run out on this. Put it on this character. I don't care if it pisses people off.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I thought that one was
I think the only good thing that came out of Armada was the Unicron figure. We finally got a Unicron.
Well, the Shockwave or the Tidal Wave figure was pretty amazing.
You know,
I'm trying to remember.
Nobody's mentioning that one guy. I think, what was it? Sideways? No, not Sideways. Sideways is a jet. I can't remember his name, but he's like god awful, and everybody hates him. He just looks terrible. It's a blue car of sorts. Let me see if I can find it. Bad Armada figure.
Good luck with that list.
Oh,
but I think
he's the top.
Oh, wasn't that Prowl? No, I'm thinking of Robots in Disguise again. Never mind.
Nope.
Yeah,
it was Sideswipe.
Are you sure it was Armada? Oh, okay, so that was Armada, not Energon then that it came out? Oh, it's probably repainted for Energon.
It may have been repainted. I'll go ahead and I'll put this in our group chat so you can see what I'm talking about here, because he is some special type of terrible. Like, this isn't one of those your parents dropped you as a kid. This is one of those your parents left you to the wolves and tried picking you up 5 days later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, I have him on TF Weekly in front of me. I've never owned it, but I've seen it in the toy store. Man, that's a god ugly figure.
Oh gosh, yes. I owned this at one point. Sad to say.
God, yeah.
Sad to say.
Well, if you've ever wanted to see a Transformer that looks like he shit his pants, that's the one.
Well, he's one of the ones. The other one is Titanium Soundwave, because he literally looks like he's wearing a diaper.
Well, at least he's come prepared.
All right. Well, we've had a lot of fun here. We could go on a little bit more, but I want to give people a little bit of breathing space between the live streams. So, first of all, to my co-host, thank you all for joining me in this disjointed, rambling mess of nonsense that I put together. I hope you've all enjoyed your chat here, and hopefully we can do something like this next year. And to my chat and my channel members, thank you all for joining us, and I am sorry this isn't more structured. I just wanted to have fun with it this time. I'll catch you guys next time, and take care.
Thanks, bye.